Thanks, Julian. Good morning, everybody. I'm the Chair Professor and Head of English in the university, and this is why I have to wear a suit. I'm not allowed to wear a t-shirt and jeans like everybody else, but it's only for today. Of course, normally in the department I wear a t-shirt and jeans, just like everybody else. I thought, since you're going to hear so much from Professor Lamb and our other colleagues in the department, you're going to hear a lot now about what we do in English in CUHK. I thought I might do something a little bit different and give you a very, very short English lesson, just for a minute. And the subject of the English lesson is the University Orientation Day. And this is obviously an English phrase, and you may be wondering what it means. What is the word orientation? Where does it come from? And what about the word university? Where does that come from? So I thought you might like to hear a little bit about the meaning of those words. But first of all, I just want to tell you something. I have to say this because I'm the guy in the suit and it's my job. Nevertheless, it is true that there have been a great many research studies done of the employees in international organizations, both government and international organizations like the UN or multinational corporations, private sector companies. And the studies have shown almost always that people's seniority, how far up they rise within those international organizations, wherever they are located in the world, in countries as far apart as Brazil or Russia or Africa, people's seniority within organizations correlates directly to their level of English proficiency. So it's just one study, but it does suggest that by becoming really good at English, you are greatly increasing your chances of career success wherever you go in your career, but particularly if you have an international orientation, just to come back to that word. And I should also say, as you might expect me to, but it's still true, that by studying in this department with these professors, that is in Hong Kong's broadest, the department that offers Hong Kong's broadest coverage in both literary studies and applied linguistics. By working with a young and friendly and student-oriented department, which also has a very high international reputation, as shown in the recent research assessment exercise. By doing all of these things, you would be taking a very practical step for your own futures, as well as enjoying yourself and having a very good time, because the subject matter of what you look at in both literature and applied linguistics is so interesting and so relevant to what it means to be a language-using human being, and what it means to be those things in the world, in the international language, in the world language, which English, of course, is. Anyway, back to my topic. The word orientation. So many English words actually derive from an older language. In this case, many English words derive from the language of the Roman Empire, which was called Latin. In fact, people often forget that England was, for many hundreds of years, a colony of the Roman Empire. And then 1,000 years later, or not quite so much, my maths is not as good as my language, it was also a colony of France, of the Norman French. But because of that period when the Romans colonized England, Latin is a very important part of the origins of the English language. And the word orientation is from the word orient, which I've used a couple of times already. And the Latin word that this comes from is a Latin word oriri, O-R-I-R-I, and it means to rise, anything that rises. But particularly it was applied to the rising of the sun. So since the sun, I believe, and I'm not a geographer either, but I believe that the sun usually rises in the... Somebody said east. Somebody knows which side the sun rises. So for Europeans, the lands to their east, where the sun rises, became known as the Orient. So I suppose strictly in Hong Kong, the Orient is America. And strictly for Americans, the Orient is in Europe. But in the European languages, the Orient means Asia. And orienting yourself means working out which way is east, getting your bearings in the compass. So you've come to the university today not to find out where Asia is, because you're sitting in it, you already know, but to work out which way is which. find out where the English department is or what it is, maybe to find out what the Chinese university is, to orient yourself in general towards a university. And it's also a chance, of course, for the university to turn itself, to orient itself towards you. So that brings me to the other question, also connected with turning, the question of what is a university? And I don't know whether anybody else will tell you about this today, but I just want to do that for 2 minutes. And again, we have to turn to Latin to understand this word. The word university comes from 2 words in Latin, unus, which means one, and gives us our words like unit and unity. And the other one is versus, which means to turn, a turn, and it gives us our word verse, which is very important in poetry, but also words like diverse and diversity. So the word university in Latin means one turn, one complete turn, just the same as the word universe, in fact, which it sounds a little bit like. The universe is everything that you see when you do one complete turn of the heavens, all the stars and the planets, a 360-degree turn. Similarly, the university is everything and everyone you see if you stand in the middle of the campus and do a complete circle. Not stars and planets and comets and moons, but all the scholars and the teachers and the professors, and of course the students, who are just as much a part of the university as the professors. And in the original period when universities were founded in the West, which is close to 1,000 years ago now, the universities organized themselves into guilds or societies of scholars, all the scholars who taught law and medicine and rhetoric and theology and architecture and so on. In those very earliest days, when the universities were first founded in Paris, in Oxford, in Bologna, the university was 2 things. And I want to suggest to you that it still is 2 things. Firstly, it offers you a professional training. In those days, in law or medicine or architecture, nowadays, of course, still in those things, but other things like engineering or business and so on. So it was a professional training, but also, and more fundamentally, what the university offered you was a training in how to think and how to express yourself clearly. And this was why the fundamental program of study at the beginning of everybody's university course in the year 1000 was called the trivium, meaning in Latin, 3 ways. Trivium, the 3 ways. Our word trivial kind of hides the fact that the trivial subjects are the absolutely basic ones without which you can't do anything else. And in the original university trivium, the subjects were grammar, rhetoric, and logic. That was the 3 ways. Now, the professional training is still what a university does, and the teaching you to think is still what a university does. And in this department, basically what we teach you is something like grammar, rhetoric, logic, and also literature and linguistics, which are the modern evolutions of the original subjects of the trivium. So English is still the heart of teaching you how to think. It's both humanly interesting because it takes you into the heart of what it means to be human, but it is also immensely practical in that it will take you into many professions and both supplement or form the foundations of whatever profession you eventually choose to do. So the single most useful tool you can have in any future career, I believe, especially with an international orientation, is a good understanding of English. So here you are at the crossroads of the 3 ways, orienting yourself in a university in the Orient, learning a little bit about what is probably the most useful and the oldest of all university subjects. And it's being taught, we like to think, in Hong Kong's 2nd oldest English department and also one of its 2 best English departments. So with that little final advertising flourish, I want to hand back to Professor Lam and our other colleagues in the Department of English. Thank you for listening.